Well, how is everybody doing today? I hope you're doing well. I know I've had my ups and downs as of late, but that's besides the point. We're not here for that. I'm here actually to talk about video games. Something I haven't really spoken about in the last little while because things have just been I've been in my own little world. But my own little world is becoming very big, and there's a lot of worries that I see from myself, from many of you. A few people have reached out and actually expressing these things. I know things are kind of looking rough right now when it comes to video games, with the way I see government trying to intertwine themselves into the spaces of the internet, how they're trying to push other things going on, and it's discouraging. It is very discouraging. But I have to say, the few things that are going on out there is you can still play your video games. This is one of the reasons why having a library of games is kind of important, why it's something that should never be able to be taken away from you. I know recently we saw itch.io, and Steam making moves because of stuff that came down from the credit card companies. Well, when a company that is your sole provider of your payment source steps in and says that you have to do certain things, well, you've got to have a knee-jerk reaction to it, and hopefully things even out over time, because that's the only hope I can see out of that. We have seen a few things come back and swing back the other way. Now, how that started, my God, how that started I think it was Collective Shout. Some organization, some group of people turned around and berated other platforms to say certain games shouldn't exist. And, I have to agree, the game in particular, I don't even remember the name of it because it's a discouraging, absolute, disgusting looking game, shouldn't exist. But that doesn't mean that the processors or the sites that sell the games have control over it. If you look at, Section 230 in the United States, they're trying to open up freedom of expression and have a free and uncontrolled internet at this point, where things do get taken down if they're something that is very discouraging, very, very not so much good in that sense, but it creates this open-ended rule: what you can, what you can't do, what is allowed and what is not allowed. And honestly, what is not allowed, or what should be allowed, is that the market decides these things. That people like you and me sit there and pick up a game when we want to. If we want to play these certain discouraging games, that's none of my business. But it's also, it gets to the point where, yeah, there needs to be rules about these types of things, but it shouldn't be overpowering and parental over adults. If you're an adult and you're just buying a game, then be the adult. If it's something that discouraging, then maybe you should face something in a court of law, because then it would be deemed illegal. That's the difference here. And now we see governments like the UK sitting there with the ID, saying that you're going to need an ID. And, we keep seeing all these things pop up. I saw one in particular where NVIDIA wanted an ID to be able to change your graphics card settings. And then you look a little bit further into it, and yeah, they want they only want your date of birth to be able to go forward. That's something that's been going on for a while, and it wasn't necessarily where they needed your ID to do this, but the phrasing of it really did show that. This is the internet. Unfortunately, you got to weed through what's going on in one hand and try and decide where it sits in the other. Those are the things that we all have to determine. I know one thing. If every company sits there and says you need a piece of ID to surf the internet, well, that creates more data. And unfortunately, in this world, data doesn't shrink. It always grows. This is why I'm an electrician with a ticket where I can actually do fiber splicing. That's where I am in the real world, because I know where the real world is going with data. And that's what's going on. Is it a good thing for all these companies to sit there and require ID? This is something that's been contentious for a while. You fill out a form saying you are of age. I remember reading recently in some TOSs where they say, well, unless otherwise noted and a parental guidance comes in and says otherwise, you're considered to be an adult. Now, these new laws, these new ideas that are being pushed down are sudden and changes. But the signs were there that this was on the horizon. I spoke about this in a video a few months ago. And, I actually had a couple people reach out and say that some of the information was worrisome, that they didn't think that I was on the level saying that you needed to worry about these things. But where are we today? Now we're at a point where today we're looking at these new laws and a lot of people are questioning where their freedoms are going. What does that all mean? Well, does this change much? I don't know. I'm more worried that what's going to change here in the next few years here in Canada, where I am, with the CRTC, the communications overseeing body, because in the next few years they're coming out with new rules that Canadians are going to have to follow with algorithmic changes and possibly more ID laws to be able to live stream, make videos, and the such for social media. These are things that I keep tabs on because I do watch the trends of these things. And over the last little while, there's been a lot of things that have come up where the trends are skating in a direction that's going to create more censorship, and it's going to create an overseeing body over the internet entirely. These aren't the internet we know, where it was free to be able to speak and be able to be on a forum and be able to sit there and just converse with those around us. Does that mean that we all need to get upset or have anxiety over these things? Well, honestly, I think there's a little bit of worry. There's a little bit there that people need to know. It's going to change things as we know it. I know recently I did we did the podcast style talk, or the couch panel with a bunch of friends about how Nintendo's actions also are if their actions continue, they're going to be changing the landscape of video games entirely. There's a lot of moving cogs right now in an industry that is seeming to be plateauing because there's only so many people out there in the world. But it also creates a space for indie developers to slide into these spaces and make something great. There's a very lot of discouraging things that I've seen in the last little bit, and I see a lot of people are worried. But for me, one thing that keeps me going is having a little bit of hope. All these nightmare scenarios that are out there, they've always been there. And day after day, we turn around and we take one step forward. And that step forward leads down a path that continues to rise up and let us be free to have our choices in video games. In spaces where people can just express themselves. That's where I sit. ID laws for the internet. That's a monumental task. And knowing what I know, because I live here in Alberta, they are looking at 6 data centers. That doesn't even dwarf the amount of data that people are going to need to store in order for this thing to work if they want to continue those things. The infrastructure is just not built. And I don't understand why suddenly government is getting involved in what seems like a corporational push into something that just seems daunting and not possible when you look at the current state of affairs. You're looking at the world and they're saying, oh, you're going to do this, we're going to have humans do this, we're going to have AI do that, everything's going to be automated. And then what does that leave the rest of us? Well, I guess you just televise the noise, right? That's what it is. You televise the noise, you put it in front of everyone, and you try to ignore the background. It's not good. Now, what are people doing? I've seen petitions go up, I've seen all these things go up, and I see people trying to push back. But that pushback against a government body that was elected officials that are now putting people in place that weren't ever elected into like a corporate style nuance. What does that really mean? Where does that go from there? Data is growing at an exponential rate, and I am surprised really that it's taken this long for these types of things to really be pushed. Is it right to have to sit there and throw your ID out there just to be able to log into a computer? I think that goes against the whole standard of what the internet is. I think that goes against the whole grain of why it created something where it is. It goes against the telephone. There's a reason why you're not allowed to spy on people using their landlines. There's a reason why you have a lot of movies out there that depict this. What is it? I'm trying to remember the name. It's a Will Smith movie back a while ago where the Game Boy gets put in the bag and it goes from there because someone caught on camera someone getting murdered, and then the digital world cracks down on there and it becomes this whole race and this whole thing where Will Smith ends up having to run away and hide and finds help with the hacker and all these other things out there. What is that movie called? Anyway, I do remember it vividly. It was one of the greater movies of the history at this point, and that's kind of what it feels like we're starting to live into. Minority Report, another one with Tom Cruise. These are a few things that have been foretold, especially through movies in like a science fiction style fashion. But we all know science fiction leads to discovery and innovation and something that's going on in the real world. And now we're at the crossroads where everyone's standing forward and saying, I don't want to do this. I'm not a child, I'm an adult, and I need to be treated as much. Remember when I went through school to become an electrician, there was a lot of things that I disagreed with during those times because, yes, I was an adult, but they treat people in that trade or in the school like they're a child because it's overseen as an entity of the government. The government has ultimate control, and they say yay or nay if you're able to move on. And in the schools, do things that are over in abundance and act like a parental guidance at this point. I think everyone has the right to choose their own path and have the right to be able to play the games they want. And I believe the market needs to decide these things very, very quickly. Steam has been up there at the forefront in being able to allow certain things that are, in a lot of ways, are distasteful. But it doesn't mean they shouldn't exist. That's the problem here. Yeah, some twisted mind made some very, very disturbing games. And those twisted minds You now have to wonder of two things. I'm just going to throw this out there as an idea. Was this game created to create a censorship nightmare and for something down the line? Or did the dev really step forward with that much of a twisted mind to create a game that honestly shouldn't have existed in the first place? Yeah, there's certain things that we all disagree with in the world. And government control over the internet? The internet. A worldwide phenomenon of the internet where 8 billion people on this planet sit there and discuss what is going on. It's like your phone where you can reach out and talk to somebody. But the internet, this is the battleground that none of us expected in our day and age. Yeah, it's a very mature thing at this point to be able to be online and be able to do things. But that's the point. What does it come to at this point? Where do we go? I can't answer these things. But I do see a lot of worry. But just remember to keep going forward and keep doing what you do. And don't let certain bodies of government sit there and tell you otherwise that, yeah, we need to see your ID. It's not like you're going into somewhere to buy alcohol or buy other things, buy cigarettes, buy things that are regulated. This is the internet. If this continues down the path, it's going to push people more underground, and then the freedom of thought and the freedom of expression goes underground. That's not what anyone wants. Everyone wants to see everyone expressing themselves the way they should be. Anyway, these are my current thoughts on what's going on. Hey, maybe I have a few things wrong, but this is what's rattling around in my head. Just know that I see everybody and that you belong where you belong. You should be there. You need to do what you need to do, but just enjoy the games you have. The digital playground, maybe it's changing. Hopefully not. Anyway, thanks for watching. I am your proud Canadian Phoenix, Cindershadow. I'm signing off here. Have yourselves a great day. And I will see you again very, very soon.